I get your guys' name confused. You're the Big Bad Moon and you're Mr. Bear.
So you can
right?
call me Moon, and you can call him
Okay, I'll
Bad.
call you Moon.
Also,
Okay.
I think the stream is working again. Hopefully.
So you'll be
So-
Moon?
Yeah. Or Big.
Okay. I was like, our host?
So
I'm gonna call him.
what I'm saying is I think the area where Numenera shines, the reason Numenera is interesting, or a big part of what makes Numenera interesting, is that juxtaposing these seemingly magical elements with this sci-fi stuff. With this, like, the sci-fi stuff is like, okay, I get that. There's like nanites for terraforming the atmosphere next to things that we don't understand well enough so they feel like magic. I think that's a large part of what makes Numenera so interesting. Is the
Well, and I like the way they did it too, just because they worked so hard on but at the same time they didn't do it enough, like you said.
If
It was like I want to know more about that.
if the first half of any episode, any moment I was bored, if they had just put Numenera in there, I'd have been like, I don't even care. We don't need a story or characters. This is cool. I want to know about it.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It's an interesting setting that is not very frequently explored, unfortunately, because it is really interesting. It's really fascinating.
What do you guys feel about the characters?
I think, in my opinion, during the first half of the show, I think the characters are all kind of dull just because they don't get their story, they don't get their motivations expanded on. In fact, okay, Millie Thompson, and I can't remember
The
her
other
name. The other
person.
one,
I can't remember.
the
It's
insurance
something with an
agent.
M.
Yeah.
The insurance agent. So those are characters. What's interesting about them is that they don't really have much in the way of motivations. So right off the bat, initially they're very kind of boring characters, but it's obvious from the get-go that they are going to develop motivations. Like the setting, everything set up for them to develop motivations. And I was just waiting the entire time, like, I know they're going to be like actual characters at some point, but they just don't feel like it yet. And then at the end, they actually develop motivations and they start acting on their motivation. Like in it, they feel like real characters, and I really liked the characters by the end of it. And I feel like that's how I felt about the entire cast of Trigun.
Yeah.
I didn't really care about them.
I just
And
didn't
then I
know
really
what
liked
Millie's
them at the end.
purpose was. Like with Meryl, at least,
Yeah.
I kind of got like she was on a mission. Like she wanted
Right.
to find out why this was happening. Whereas Millie just kind of felt a little like a comic relief almost.
Millie is very much a
And then
is very much like an emotional intelligence, like not having her own drives other than to support her friends kind of character. She is entirely a character who is driven by being like, I care about other people, and so whatever they want is what I want. She's a character who on her own would be completely uninteresting because she has no drive whatsoever to act in her own interest.
So
and she's really
So here's something about Million. What was the other one?
Meryl.
So Millie doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't really have her own motivations. She just kind of follows Meryl around and wants things that other people want. Which is fair. Meryl, I think that while she very well may have had this motivation of wanting to find, I don't know, I guess just find, like, do her job or whatever, she really didn't have, like, I don't know if she ever really stated, if it was ever really stated that she had a specific, like, driving motivation other than, like, she needed to do her job. There are a couple of implied things, like that she likes him and wants to go and, I don't know, be near him.
Oh no.
Oh, the lights.
Twitch got
Aziz, lights.
But
okay. So near the end, I think it's fairly well conveyed near the end that she cares about Vash,
right.
and that she is she is specifically like going out of her way in the interest of helping Vash. Like
Right.
her and Millie leave the insurance place and they go looking for Vash and they do various things in pursuit of Vash. Like I think her motivation at the end there is relatively clear that she's like, I care about
Right.
Vash and I want to help him out.
And so for that, I would say one of the issues with that is a very stagnant motivation, because what does that mean? Like, she wants to help Vash, but what does helping Vash mean? Like, how do you help Vash? So I feel like there was never really a moment for her character that where I was like, okay, I know exactly what she's trying to do. Aside from this whole like she wants to do her job thing, but like at the end when I got this, she wanted to help Vash in the end and like be supportive of whatever. But that's kind of one of those like open things. Like, how do you help Vash? I guess be there if he needs something, or be supportive of him. So I feel like for Millie and Meryl, they were interesting characters. I liked Millie. Meryl was, I thought, all right. Mostly,
Yeah,
I also Meryl had like mixed. Like,
I really think the issue is that the way the writer wrote them,
uh,
they did not have any meaningful pre-existing motivations. All of their
Right, yeah.
motivations had to be developed during the show, and because they
Yeah.
didn't have anything initially, they were stale characters from the start, and they had to build into interesting characters.
and
They're,
maybe.
like,
Go ahead.
yeah, they didn't really seem to care about the insurance company. Like it
Right,
was
yeah.
it was a job that they were doing.
I felt that same way, where
Yeah.
it wasn't like, oh well, this is our job, we care about it, and you're
Right, yeah.
destroying everything. No, it was like,
They're here and they're doing their job,
well,
and
now that we know you're Vash, oh okay, we'll hang out with you.
Yeah, they had some slight like trying to do the right thing motivations that were very minor in the background, like we shouldn't put ourselves in harm's way, but these are bad guys, so we will. And so they almost act like they're with some sort of like law enforcement agency.
Yeah,
when
no,
they're with
really.
the insurance company. Oh, what is the deal with insurance in this world? Is this the only insurance company, and are they like a police force? I want to know, because it's kind of
I don't know.
Explain, like I don't know.
It was really kind of interesting. Yeah. So there was some interesting stuff going on there. I don't think that it was awful. I don't think that Millie and Meryl were awful. I just they seemed like they needed more of a point to be there. Like actually, aside from maybe a few specific things that happened in each episode, for the overall story, could they have just been completely removed from the story, and would the story have been fine if that would happened? Maybe in a lot of episodes.
So I would make an argument that all of the characters could be removed from the first half of the anime. And then we could just like amputate that half of the anime.
Yeah.
Like honestly, here's the thing. If the last 6 episodes were representative of the entire anime, I think that this would be like, it would be a phenomenal anime that it would be hard to complain about any of the characters.
I guess
because
my biggest thing is like, I read some other people's reviews as well, and they liked that it flipped like that. They liked that first part set them up like, oh, this is just kind of goofy, silly. You don't have to be in it as much.
I kind of think that's just expecting something not to be great and then being pleasantly surprised that it is.
So here's how I feel about that. I feel like I understand what they're saying there.
Right.
I also feel like the first half is just not very good. If it had been more cohesively written with more, like, it could be lighthearted and it could be kind of goofy and fun, and but it was very floaty, and there wasn't enough there wasn't enough specific motivation, and the episodes were kind of about nothing things that didn't really matter.
I
agree
will
with that.
say, I will say, I can see why this is kind of like a cult classic anime. Why
Oh
people would
yeah.
love it because really the end being as good as it is
Yeah.
colors the entire like perception of the anime. It makes
Absolutely.
like if I remembered I I was surprised when we started watching it and I was like these early episodes just nothing's happening. I thought I remembered this as being a lot better.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
like the end is
honestly, when I
really good.
tried to watch it, I couldn't like when I tried like 10 years ago to watch it.
Uh huh.
I really had a really hard time making it through, and that was before I even like got into like acting or anything like that as much as I have. So I understand like the wants and the objectives and the motivations. And like I just couldn't like I watched like 2 or 3 episodes. I was like, nope. My husband's like, it's so good. I'm like, I will eventually.
Well,
I
and
here's the
and
thing.
or go ahead now.
And I did.
If I were to recommend this anime to someone, I would just tell them start from the recap episode 13. You'll get the beginning and then just bear through any slow episodes from there on because it'll get really good.
I have to say, an episode that almost brought me to tears, the voice acting was so good, was I believe it was like 6 or 7. It was when the power plant was about to explode.
Right. Right.
Like made it happen and put Vash in there. Voice acting was spot on.
Oh
Like
yeah.
she said things differently. She like it popped so much because like compared to the other ones who were kind of like
Right.
was so distinct and so precise with what she wanted. Her objective was clear. It came
Yeah.
through her voice. It was great.
I
So like I was gonna cry. It was so good.
I have a question. And now this is a little bit divergent from what you were saying, but it is inspired by what you were saying. So that character, we know we have some idea of her age, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
of the flashback and
That's
the
weird
time
too. Yeah.
stuff. And I'm not gonna talk about specifically that, but I would like to ask, how long has it been since they crashed on?
That's a very good
There
question.
is, huh? There's a and in the graveyard it says that the kid's father died in year 0152. So that's the only thing I can think of is that it started at 0.
It's kind of
somewhere in the almost 200 realm.
yeah, it's kind of weird because the flashbacks at the end make it feel like it's happened within the last 20 years.
Yeah. No, it does.
Right.
And I was thinking it had been hundreds of years before that, but
Yeah.
then with the flashbacks at the end, I was like, wait, did this happen within the last 20?
Yeah.
Was this a recent event? Because of the way they chained the events together, it felt very
Well, and then they do this thing where they
It
have a
doesn't
couple
really
of really
flow.
big time skips where
Wouldn't they
they're just
remember?
like, they'll be doing stuff and then it'll say 50 years later. It's like, oh wow, they were sitting at a spaceship for 50 years. Wow, that's a lot of years to sit there at a spaceship.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the time stuff maybe was not perfectly clear, and it got a little bit hard to get your mind around with, especially some of the flashbacks near the end.
I think I before the flashbacks, I think I had much closer to what the writer intended in my head for the timeline, but after the flashbacks, I felt a bit confused on the timeline because it's
well, and
like,
I
yeah.
So here's
the city.
You go ahead. The city.
The city destruction, the first city destruction, which Vash the Stampede gets his reputation for, is it like 16 years ago? Some amount of time. A few. It's within the last 20 years, and I need to check when that was.
Yeah. No, I feel like it was like 20 years after the second destruction was like 20 years after. So it was something like that. That's I think what I had in my head. But yeah, no, I think this is perhaps a thing that happens occasionally in science fiction, and that is that when the writers try to explain something, like something, it works fine, and then they try to explain it more, and then it starts getting a little bit confusing because they're trying to give you all this information about when, or you know, just like whatever the information they're giving you is. And it just like, see, it kind of works, and you don't really have to worry about it. And then they start telling you about how it works, and then you're like, okay, wait, how did it work? I'm confused.
You know what made it feel a little weird is the image I had in my head of, because at the beginning, very beginning of the series.
I'm sorry, you cut out. The image you had in your head of what?
Vash.
Oh, okay.
The protagonist. At the very beginning of the series, what is your impression of Vash? Who do you think Vash is?
A goofball.
He seems
a
like
super goofball.
He seems like a wandering, like, loner character who takes odd jobs and like bounty hunting work, and that's his thing. But at the end, it's kind of suggested that at the start of the story is just after or it feels like recently after the July incident. So it almost feels like his demeanor in the beginning isn't consistent with the, like, he's running from his brother. He's like he just had that big thing happen. It feels, his initial behavior feels kind of detached from that and weird. But maybe it's been years since then.
Right.
I guess it's just the timeline confusion.
Yeah, no, and I think probably the timeline confusion is the thing. I feel like, and that's just, I think, them getting their footing. You know, and once they establish what they want, you know, they put down more of a solid, like, this is what's going on, but because of, you know, not quite knowing what they were doing at the very beginning, it does feel a little bit detached. You know, I think that's, it did take them a while. So, okay, so with Trigun in general, I think that's probably the theme here is the plot didn't really get going until ways through the story, or the really important information didn't really get going until ways through the story, and once it started picking up into the main, like, what's actually going on, because yeah, like you said, the first few, there were some interesting episodes, there were some not bad episodes early on, but they were episodes that didn't really matter with respect to the plot. It didn't really matter with respect to what anybody cared about, except, of course, as Tro was saying, except for, what is it, Millie, who just really liked pudding.
Oh, God, yeah, that was hilarious.
I think we can call that her motivation. Also, I want to take this moment to say that the recurring cat is best girl.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cat's best girl.
Easily.
My son saw the cat, and he's like, Dad, you have that cat. He's had it since before he was born.
That's awesome.
It was cute.
That's where it came from. The far future.
Yeah, it's if they'd have set up character motivation sooner, because we didn't, like, the insurance agents, both of them, they had to develop some motivations. They didn't start with them, and Vash didn't get enough backstory expanded on for to have any visible motivations.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here's how I feel about the insurance agents, and tell me what you think after this. So, the insurance agents, Millie and Meryl, thank you, Millie and Meryl. With respect to the main story and with respect to Vash's development as a character, with his development and his own motivations, and with respect to any of the important stuff that happens in the story, could you remove Millie and Meryl from the story completely, and would the story still work? Because did they affect Vash in a way that really...
Okay.
I don't think they should be removed.
I'm not saying they should be removed.
I don't think it would work. I think you would need something to replace it.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I think that what you're saying is slightly detached from what I'm saying. That these things are kind of separate. Like, okay. They serve a very important function in one of the later episodes. So the episode where the guy with the big cross on his back dies.
Right. Yeah.
They're very important in that episode, and they're like, that is the key point in the story. Like, if that episode were not in the story, I would be like, they don't need to be, like, they almost don't need to be here. They serve, like, that is the most important moment in the story.
Right.
For them as characters, they do kind of serve a purpose because...
No, okay, yeah. No, I agree. I think, yeah.
Here's the thing. They have motivations. They
Pudding.
develop their motivations over the course of the story so that they have them by the end. Their motivations are not really important to... They're not really a part of the overarching, like, the Vash narrative, right? They're like... They care, like, it's, Meryl cares about Vash.
Right.
But that's... I think that's kind of a... In respect to the Vash and his brother kind of overarching story of the show. Like, caring about Vash is a very side motivation. This is a motivation that in a lot of other narratives would be a, like, you see this character with their loving brother in the background before they leave. Their loving brother isn't a part of the story, really, but they're in the background. They're like,
so Millie and Meryl, so long as they affect the main story or the main character, in an important way, that still makes them relevant.
They have that. I think the episode where what is his name? I need a...
The priest?
The priest, yeah. I haven't thought about...
Wolfwood, that was it.
Wolfwood, yes. I think the Wolfwood episode is, like, that is an essential moment. Like, they're very, very important in that episode. Like, I think that episode is probably... Is that the best episode in the show?
That might be. I'd have to think about it because it's definitely one of the last 6 episodes, and that being the first really, I would say that was the first really good episode. Like, that was the first episode that I watched, and I was like, wow, that was really, really good. That might be one of the best episodes. It certainly is one of the best episodes in the show. It might be the best episode. I'd have to watch them again.
Yeah, I would say their motivations aren't really essential to the main overarching story, but their presence, which is caused by their motivation, their presence there, and the way they are influenced by what is going on, has a meaningful effect on the story and on the protagonist.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
They're not, like... Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Millie and Meryl, no, I agree. I think that they do serve an important function, and they do affect the main character. Whose name I can't remember just now. Vash the Stampede. Yeah, I was like, wow, I know it's crazy. I know it's something good.
Here's the thing, right? If someone has a nickname like that, you only in very select circumstances use their name and their nickname together, right? You just call them the Stampede. You don't need to say Vash the Stampede every time.
Or do you call them Vash the Stampede every time? Because if I knew someone whose nickname or whose, like, given name was Vash the Stampede, I would call them Vash the Stampede every time. Good morning, Vash the Stampede.
That'd just be fun.
And if there was a camera watching with an audience, then they'd get that exposition. Every single time.
It is
Just
so
you know, I think we should all just go through life assuming that the cameras are pointed at us and we're the expository characters.
This is like a joke in comedies when the person has a name that's really, really long and they demand to be called by their full name. Except it's the opposite. It's the opposite because he's like, don't call me by my full name. But for some reason, everyone in the story
does.
is like, you know, it's just easier to say the full thing.
Well, I feel like that's... I feel like that's got to be a thing that actually happens to, like, film stars.
Yeah, I could imagine that happening to, like, celebrity people who are not... But by people who have that, like, parasocial relationship where they're like, I've never met you before, but I've heard of you so many times, Mr. Mel Brooks.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm terrible at saying the full name of things. Like, even if it's like DCPA, I will say Denver Center for the Performing Arts every time. My husband's like, you don't have to say it every time. I'm like, oh, I know.
But the exposition is not as clear then. What do I do?
I'm terrible at that. I do it for everything. I've got to get out of that habit.
But so going back then on the probably the biggest problem with the show, which is just the kind of lack of motivation for the first big part of the show. Probably one of the biggest strengths of the show are the last 5-6 episodes, where they really get into it. Like, that's probably the last 6 episodes. Definitely, I think carries the show. Because that
I think
it got so much the level of interest, because it, like, I don't think there was. Go ahead.
I think you phrased it the best you possibly could there in saying the last 6 episodes carry the show. They are, like, those episodes are the reason the show is good.
Yeah,
they're like they
absolutely
lift it up, and it's. I mean, we like
There's nothing that is thematically or in a lot of respects. There's nothing that is, like, horrible about the first part of the show. It just does not. It just lacks the story, and I think they, in the last 6 episodes, really had to pick up and be like, okay, we need to get the rest of this thing told. We can't, have this episode and that episode, and they just got so far into the story that, like, that's what we wanted the whole time. Yeah, go ahead, Bad.
I also want to say, if you are like me and you're like, gosh, I want to see an anime that has tragedy in it and isn't terribly written, watch last 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Because I love me some good character death where the writer doesn't like go so far as to be like, I think I'll kill off everyone now and deprive the loss of any meaning.
Yeah.
But they're also not like, well, we need to keep all the characters alive so that the audience can be happy. Like, that getting that proper level of tragedy. That it's like, I feel bad, but without devaluing it, without
and that was
overdoing it is.
And that is honestly a relatively rare thing, doing a really, like, good justified, like, good death of a character, like Wolfwood, because, like, this is a thing that I think happens in really bad writing, is that people will kill a character and nobody likes that character, and they'll kill him, or they'll like kill a bunch of characters to increase the sad or whatever.
This I will say, this gets me, this eats at me. The bad guy character who is written to be disliked,
right,
and to be killed off later on.
Yeah.
It makes me so upset. They're like, they write the character so that the audience will hate them, and then they kill them off later on, and I'm just like angry at the writer.
Why did you do
this?
Yeah. No, and this is that they did such a good job with Wolfwood because you really like him. I think he has, like, morally, you could kind of agree with him and kind of disagree with him, and he's in an interesting area, and his motivations are very clear cut about like what he wants. But the solution to that is, kind of hard. And like, cause he does this thing where he has this like perfectly like practical, like kind of amoral almost view of how the world works, and it's like, oh yeah, I'll kill people because this is the better thing to do. And he is contrasted by Vash, who just doesn't want to kill anybody ever for any reason.
It's kind of great because he like respects Vash.
Yeah.
And like he really kind of looks up to Vash for what Vash does and what Vash believes, despite the fact that he doesn't actually believe it, right?
No.
I love this. I absolutely
or he thinks it's like impractical, or
this is awesome. I love this as a character thing. This is like the idea of respecting and looking up to and wanting to be this other thing that you don't agree, that you kind of don't think is reasonable, that you're like, it's oh my god, I love that like knights and chivalry and doing the right thing are so good. I'm not gonna do that because we don't live in that kind of world. And then when he finally does like embrace Vash's philosophy, I think he almost knows it's gonna get him killed. He almost knows that it's not what he should be doing. It's not the best option.
Yeah, and ultimately that is what kills him, is being like Vash. And that's an interesting sci-fi like, that's an interesting thing. It's a perfect kind of thing you could get into in sci-fi, because it's like there's this idealistic, like, nobody should ever die, like nobody should ever kill anybody, and then there's the extreme opposite of that, where it's, okay, we can kill anybody, it's just like for the, whatever the, like, what's the best thing, objectively best thing, and it's like, okay, you can kill that person because they're going to be bad.
This is, so if you've ever seen Toward the Terra, I believe that's the name of the anime. They have great character death at the very end. That's like, this is perfect, and it's everything it should be. And these characters were like meant to die from the start, and this is how they should have died. And then immediately afterwards, the writer's like, now let's kill off 8 more characters. And I'm like, you just devalued the brilliant character death by murdering off. Like, it was so good. Mandy, I have not heard your thoughts.
I was going to say, you look like you have thoughts.
I always have thoughts. No, I don't know. I agree and I disagree. I enjoyed it. I agree with you that I feel like the beginning was slow to start, and the last 6 episodes were some of the better episodes overall. There's definitely some gold in there. I definitely feel like even in the beginning, not only artistically, vocally, the story, I felt there were times when it was really strong. So I mean, I'm here or there.
So this is the thing. I would say that I do disagree with Bad on, is that I would not tell you to skip the whole first bit, because I think there's a lot of important stuff in there. I would say it is slow, and it's not really directed towards the main focus of the story, but there is important plot stuff. There's important character development stuff and character establishment stuff that you can't skip the first bit. You really can't.
I would like to acknowledge your opinion and admit that it is valid, that you have an opinion and that exists. And I would like to state to the audience that I do recommend skipping them because I respect your time. And I will pass the mic back to you.
So yeah. So I feel like that's fair. That is totally fair.
I respect yours too. I just think that there are some important things throughout it, and if you're doing it because you like anime and you really want to experience, because like I said, I wanted to cry. That voice actor did such a great job.
Right.
There's some gold in there that I wouldn't want the audience to miss out on either. So if you're the kind of flip it anime watcher, I wouldn't necessarily watch the first 13 or so episodes.
So it'd be.
But if you aren't, if you're really into anime, then watch it.
I would say that I would create an episode list.
So I'm okay. I actually, if you're gonna watch the first ones, I wouldn't recommend an episode list. I would actually say, so there, like, I do recommend skipping episodes a lot, despite the fact that I never do it myself.
Yeah.
I will admit one of the big problems with skipping episodes is that you don't get the time to bond with the characters, which is a large part of what makes the dramatic sacrifices meaningful, which is what makes that stuff meaningful. I would say if you're going to watch it, put it on in the background whilst you do something else. Have it be a thing where you experience it whilst you have something else to keep your attention on, because you will get the time spent with the characters and the emotional bonding and what have you, and you'll pick up on what's going on. But
I'm the kind of person who can tune out everything in the background though. So that's not good for me.
I drift back and forth when I'm doing that. I drift back and forth depending on what's going on.
So here's the thing about skipping episodes that I think is kind of complicated. So I think that skipping episodes is entirely reasonable for certain kinds of stories. And they're the kinds of stories in which characters don't go through any significant character development, and that they just are in a homeostasis. They just exist and they are who they are, and there are things that they go through. And so maybe I'm wrong about this, but it's something like the Pokemon anime. As far as I recall, they don't really change. They just go and there's battles and they just do that same thing.
Counterpoint. Pikachu can now talk.
That's I heard about that.
Did you not know, Mandy? Oh my god, I need to send this to you. Give me one moment whilst I find this.
Oh dear God.
Oh my god, you will love it.
So,
it is perhaps the finest thing to ever exist.
Is that what it is, or is it the other thing? Bad.
When I was younger, I used to think Digimon was really good, and then I tried to rewatch it. I couldn't.
And you were like, "Oh my god, this was I had horrible taste as a kid."
Just click on that. Just click on that and listen, because you're gonna hear something that's gonna make you go like, "Oh."
What?
Yes, this is happening live.
Oh dear goodness. But so if you've watched Pokemon and you disagree and you think that Ash Ketchum has this huge important character arc that defines his character and changes who he is, that's fair. But I think what I was trying to just get across the point is that very much like the show Friends, all those characters for the most part are just always the same. Joey is Joey, and he likes hitting on women, and he eats.
So you mentioned Friends. Friends being a situational comedy with a lot of character humor.
Yes.
The fact that Joey in that show is a static character allows him to consistently utilize character humor because his character is the same. They can always act on the character humor in the same kind of ways and have the audience always know what to expect because this character isn't changing that significantly.
So see, this is for this specific example it works, but I would say that Friends is a really good show and you don't want to skip any episodes. I would ask you actually about Sailor Moon. Do those characters have big growth arcs? Do they change over the course of the show?
Sailor Moon's maybe, but God, that show is hard to watch because it is hard to watch because it is so intentionally constructed. You can watch 5 episodes in a row, and every episode you can take it and you can look at the formula and be like, this is identical to the previous episode. They follow all of these things. They hit all these notes at the exact same point. You know what's going to happen.
When
from
did that style? I'm just curious. Like, when did that style come about? Because before Sailor Moon, I mean, there were other things that just had a formula. That's just what they did.
I
So
mean,
I'm
honestly,
curious where that
I
came from
think
because I
it's
think kids like it.
I think it's a really
It
old
definitely.
style. I think this like goes back to like ancient storytelling, just the like having I mean,
This is the
Sailor
structure.
Moon. Sailor Moon's obviously a very specific formula, but
Hmm.
it's like I think the making rigid like structures for storytelling is something that's happened for a long time.
Well, and
Go
like you
ahead because
watch things when you were younger, like Power Rangers, or they all kind of do that too.
Well, and
I
so
want to hear.
I feel like that having a structure where you can just have the same episode over and over is not a thing necessarily that is good. And saying that kids like it, that's fair. Kids like a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, I think it's because of the repetition, though, because kids learn so much when they get it repeated over and over again.
That's
That I
fair.
think that's why it's more appealing to younger people.
There very well could be some interesting like developmental things in that, and that kids recognize, I don't know if you ever saw the show Ed, Ed and Eddie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, cartoon, and
love
they
it.
just want jawbreakers, and so every single episode is about how they are trying to get money to get jawbreakers, and it's always they come up with some crazy scam that is literally a scam because for some reason the character Ed or one of them
One of them.
just wants to scam people.
That's
And,
a clear motivation right there,
yeah,
man.
well, yeah, exactly. And so that's just what they do every single time.
No,
That
I
could be
know.
interesting. There could be definitely an interesting like developmental thing in that,
I
like
mean,
it's
it's
we know what the characters need. It's not
the
complex. It's not
I
a
think
complex development, but
I
It's
think
nice when there's an over arc, when
the
there's
idea
something
is
happening in a
that
bigger
like
world.
mm-hmm,
what you do, the reason you do this, I think, is you figure out what a good formula is for a
right.
simple story that that the audience will enjoy. The
Mm-hmm,
audience in this case being younger children, right?
right.
For Sailor Moon, like they're they're appealing to a young audience. They're like, okay, we need a story that works, that is functional, that
Mm-hmm,
this audience will enjoy, and we're gonna find the structure of that story so that we can duplicate it so that we can easily produce more episodes.
right.
They not every episode like they don't do that for every episode,
Mm-hmm,
but they do that for most episodes, and the actual episodes that are progressing the overarching story are less common. Those that formula is literally the like filler episode formula for them. The okay, we want more episodes, but we're not going to push the main story forward for the next 5, so just apply the formula to 5 episodes. It'll save us
mm-hmm.
a lot of time. It'll save us a lot of writing, and we know that people will enjoy it because it is a formula that is functional.
With Trigun, I didn't feel like they did that.
They
I
didn't
don't
do
feel
that with
like
No,
at
Trigun.
yeah,
one
they
point
didn't.
there was
No,
like
yeah, no. So
every episode formula.
I feel like with that, I feel like that is you're taking, if you have a show like that where you just are like Sailor Moon where it's a repeat formula, and every so often they hit on like the main point. I mean,
It's
so
a
this
it's a
is this is the way I feel about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think it's a great show. I think early on, Buffy is a very interesting show, and it's if you're interested in being a writer, or you just think writing is interesting, it's a really interesting thing to watch Buffy, watch the whole series, which won't take hours and hours, and look at the way the writing evolves over the show. Because early on, like the first 3 seasons are they're all right. The first 2 seasons are all right. Third season is a
They're
little bit
good.
better.
They're rough.
They're
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 good,
yeah
but they're rough.
they're uh getting they're finding their footing as writers,
Yeah.
as a writing team. The first 2 seasons are okay. A lot of Monster of the Week. There's some they have some stuff in there that's some important for
I
kind of
love
an
when
overarching
they start
plot.
playing at Monster of the Week. They're like, huh,
Yeah,
huh,
yeah.
we're doing that.
And
I,
as the show progresses, and you get into like season 6 and 7, I mean, it is a big it's a big story, and all the characters have all these big, massive problems that are affecting the whole plot or the whole season. And there isn't a Monster of the Week episode. I mean, I think there are a couple of them, but they're really speaking to the bigger story.
Right.
But
yeah, like, I mean, it's like mass production techniques. You don't
Right.
switch over from craftsman to like mass producing things in a factory because you're getting higher quality. You're doing it because it's easier and you get more out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that something like we are also running over time, by the way. I feel like something like Sailor Moon is they have an episodic structure and they know it works. They're just not taking it to that. Like, you can always have a big seasonal goal and a big overarching thing that every episode is speaking to, and they do that in every so many episodes in Sailor Moon. But the other ones, they could do it in, but they just decided not to. They need to fill, or whatever. Go ahead.
I should also make a point, right? This isn't like exclusively a bad thing, right? This is like, if you are an artist,
yeah,
you know that finding a way to avoid doing work is a good thing.
Yes.
Like, however you can make your art whilst putting in the least amount of like actual work yourself, that's great because you can make more and you can do more. Like,
that's working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, it's
perspective.
Yeah, like being able to do the least, like having the easiest path to achieving your.
I think maybe
some way of putting it.
Maybe a slightly different way of putting
Saving
that
time
would be to focus your energies and focus your effort on the things that have the biggest effect or that matter the most, and minimizing effort being spent on things that, are semi-extraneous or not as important.
Exactly. That is the point. Like, this is not exclusively a bad thing. It's just a matter of like people trying to find where they can minimize effort, and sometimes it works out really well and sometimes it doesn't.
Helen, what was it?
I just want to say, like, that's, to me, like, that can get you stuck in that place where it becomes repetitive, though.
Yeah.
So that's where you gotta stay out of. And like, there's like Naruto. I cannot bring myself to watch it. It's so many episodes.
Right.
I'm like, nah, I'm good.
And so I think one of the things that I was getting at with the you can have important plot stuff, and you can have like your character motivations for the overall goal and the big overarching stuff. You can have them in every episode. You can do the filler stuff. And for kids shows, for a lot of shows that you appreciated more as a kid, it works, but that's because kids are less picky. Like Buffy, I love Buffy. That's a great show. And I can get through some of the episodes in the early season. But that's because I'm less picky about it. If I was really going on and to be like, okay, this episode was kind of pointless, and that episode was weird and.
It's also easier to slip something by someone who doesn't know why they don't like it, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It is there.
100%.
Like, there have been plenty of situations in my life during which I have been metaphorically fed something that I was like, this doesn't taste right.
Yeah.
I don't know why though, because I don't know anything about cooking. So I'm like, is it too salty? No. Is there like something in it? It doesn't seem right. But I think it's good. I don't know.
No, that is 100%.
So I have a wonderful teacher who taught me about, if you ever feel like that, it's about calling BS on something. So it doesn't mean that they made it wrong or anything, but there's a reason why you don't like it.
Yeah.
And so I love that, because then it makes you be able to carve it out more.
Yeah, I think this is a big part of why kids stuff passes, is because kids you just need to learn stuff to
kids
know
don't.
to know what, and so
they haven't decided.
Even if the kids feel like something's wrong, they don't necessarily know enough to be able to say like, oh, it's this thing.
Yeah. And this is one of those things that really separates pretty good kids movies, kids entertainment from like amazing kids entertainment. And that's you watch it as a kid and you really loved it, and then you watch it again as an adult and you're like, oh my god, this is awesome, this is hilarious. I didn't pick up any of this. Yeah, and that's great. That is really better. Yeah, that is really good writing, and you can characters can have complex motivations. Yeah, you can I think it is always a good thing to have more complex motivations and to have characters with meaningful relationships, interactions. You can do the thing that just works for a kid's show, but if you go, and you make it a really interesting, character with a really interesting motivation, and put in like some kind of really, complex struggle for them, then you watch it again as an adult and you're like, wow, that was really good.
Also, can I just say, doing that is great. A common mistake that I feel too many writers make is clearly making their show not that way and trying to angle it towards kids.
Yeah.
I will just say all of the Adventure Time Grable episodes, I wanted to punch the writer. I was like, how dare you disrespect me in this way?
And that's the thing about writing, that's the thing about acting. You never want to talk down to your audience, regardless of what their experiences are. Because some kids are brilliant. And some kids are they're brilliant in different ways, and so they pick up on that, even if they don't know what it is, you guys said.
That is also a psychological thing that goes beyond culture. That is literally like everyone in the world is bothered by people talking down to them, or that kind of like...
No, I agree. I didn't articulate that right, but...
I know what you meant.
I'm supporting you, everything you said, yes.
No, and so I think it's a thing where if you're gonna write a kids show, don't, and this is what I say actually about all genres and all things like that, is if you're gonna write if you're gonna write a kids show, don't write a show for kids. Write a good show that is appropriate for kids.
So I will say specifically on that topic with that thing, I think it is important to never assume that the audience is stupid.
Yeah, no.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Absolutely not.
It's one of those things where people are like, well, I have to assume the audience is stupid so that I can convey all the information I need to. But it's like, no, you need to assume the audience isn't stupid, but make sure that the information is clearly conveyed.
Yeah.
Regardless, it's like a mixed thing. You need to do all of it.
Yep.
Conveying, thinking the audience is stupid is bad.
But not thinking the audience is stupid.
Thinking the audience is stupid is how you get really bad exposition.
You know what? It's like
you don't want specificity that's like the tree was green and all these colors and deciduous and you're like, oh god, I can see the tree. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
It's like what's always said in any classes where people teach you about how to have a public image.
Yeah.
Impropriety is fine. The appearance of impropriety is bad. It's okay if you think the audience is stupid, just don't appear to think the audience is stupid.
Exactly.
Then you're good. If you can just...
All right, so I'm gonna be calling. We're coming up on 10 minutes over. So I'm gonna be calling the discussion. Unfortunately, and it was a good discussion we were having. So that was our opinions of Trigun. I think overall, well, first of all, real quick. So think about what we're doing next. Bad. What are final thoughts on Trigun?
Cat is best girl, even if it is just a meme cat. I think it's cool. Watch it. Find a way to not have to pay sole attention to it at 100% speed. Like maybe bump that to 200, maybe skip some episodes, figure something out, but watch it.
That's fair. Yeah, I know, right? Hallen, final thoughts on Trigun?
I love it because it's a classic. Not just because it's a classic, but because I feel like
it is a classic for a reason.
Well. Yes. But I agree that, the ending episodes were some of the best, and I would definitely weigh towards that.
Yes.
That's my thoughts.
I definitely agree. I think I agree probably more with you, Hound, than with Bad. But I agree. Actually, I agree with everybody. I see what you're saying. It's just a difference of philosophy. That's all. But yeah, fun show. So next week, we haven't had this discussion. Everybody's been super busy. I've been incredibly busy. I got off work at 9:30 this morning, and I came back and I went to sleep for. Well, actually, I watched a couple of episodes of Spaced because that's a great show.
It's so British.
It's very British. Also, if you like Simon Pegg,
I do.
He's a good writer.
He's a really good writer. They're incredibly.
Did he write that show? Is it?
Yeah,
I love his.
Yeah, it's a British. It's a British sitcom. Ran for 2 seasons. They're only like 7 episodes each, though.
Is it on Netflix or?
I don't know. Is it not?
I don't know. I love his use of repetition in everything he writes. He uses repetition extremely well.
Yeah, Simon Pegg. Yeah, find it. It's Spaced. I'm sure it's on Netflix or Hulu or something. That is a wonderful show, and if you like really good, very very clever humor, quick, snappy writing, great. Yeah, it's a really good show. We're unfortunately not going to be watching Space for next week though, because this is in fact an anime podcast.
I will also say repetition, because I want to drag the podcast out for another 30 seconds. Repetition is one of those things that never sounds like an impressive thing, right? Like, they're really good at repeating themselves, but God, he's really good at repetition. Like, it is impressive.
He's good at making it relevant. So, yes, but
we want to do like a newer anime for next week.
Oh yeah, what are we doing next week?
You know, thank you, Bad. That is a good question, because that was a question. I've been super busy. I'm working the midnight shift right now, so I came back from work. I slept for 4 hours, and I woke up.
Anime, there might only be like 7 episodes up.
Oh my gosh, that would just be awesome.
That's what I was thinking. Like, it would be cool. There's the Zombieland Saga.
Oh my goodness.
Good. And then there's also, let's see,
Zombieland Saga.
The Time I Got Turned Into a Slime, I think is what it's called. Or Goblin Slayer is pretty brutal, but it's really good.
Goblin Slayer, that sounds awesome.
The first episode is like, whoa. There's one episode that you guys are going to be ticked at if you watch it.
Oh, I believe it.
Like, because I was ticked. It was just the very end.
Uh-huh.
But, man, I was sitting there going,
oof.
Okay.
What the?
End.
Yeah.
End already.
Oh, my God.
So, I mean, it might be a good one to talk about.
So, which one of those do you feel the most drawn to, Alan?
I like Goblin Slayer a lot.
Goblin Slayer?
Yeah. Zombieland is really just funny and funky. It's not one that you would watch to, but it's good.
I think I would be down for Goblin Slayer. How many episodes you say? Is it 7?
I think of Goblin
9?
Slayer, I think there's 9. Yeah.
I'd be good for that. Are they 24-minute episodes?
Oh yeah, they're short. Yeah.
I'd be super good for that. And I love goblins, and I love slaying goblins, and I love slaying.
The first episode's rough in a good way. Like, it's like dark. Very, very dark.
I'm into that. We haven't really done a super dark.
It's very, it's dark.
It's spicy. Oh.
I want to ask, is this part of the Otherworld anime genre?
Oh dear.
Is it like a character from
type world,
is it a character or characters from a modern realistic world transported to a fantasy world?
They live in that world.
Live in a fantasy world. Okay. Is the fantasy world reminiscent of modern video games?
I don't feel like it is.
Okay. Because sometimes they do that.
No, he's screaming no from upstairs.
Cool.
The art looks kind of interesting. I think we'll make that the. Well, that was a weird image.
That is something that sometimes happens. It's like, this is a fantasy world. Then they kill a monster, and the monster drops tokens, and they're like, we can cash these tokens in for experience points to level up.
There's elves and dwarves in it.
I love dwarves. Are they deep dwarves? Are they deep dwarves? I'm down.
All right. So I think that's what we're gonna call it. That's gonna be
need any of that hill dwarf trash.
Saturday, the 15th of December. We will be doing Goblin Slayer, the anime, the 9 episodes, which is that the full season, or is that just part of the season?
It hasn't ended yet, no.
Hasn't ended yet, so we're going to be doing whatever there is out of Goblin Slayer, 9 and maybe 10 episodes, I guess, depends on when the episodes come out. We'll be doing that again on Saturday, December the 15th. I think that has been us for the day. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching an anime story. And we'll see you next time. Have a good night, guys.
Real dwarves live underground. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.